There are about 180 areas within Auckland that have very detailed, specific planning provisions in the unitary plan, and we call those precincts, and Eden Park is one of the 180 precincts. So there are others of a similar or greater magnitude than even Eden Park, and then there are some smaller ones. So it's possible to add some key locations to the list if the committee felt that was a good way forward now, or alternatively, as we've discussed, we could wait to see the panel's recommendations in full, and if the committee felt during the workshops next year that some precincts such as Eden Park should be added, then we can discuss them at that point. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, that seems a rational way forward. Councillor Filipaina, that fits with what you were expecting?
Exactly, that's yeah.
Okay, all right. Councillor Fletcher?
Thank you. My question's to Jim Quinn, and that is, I mean, Jim, we've been posed with some really difficult decisions here, and I'm interested because government ministers responsible for this have indicated that, you know, they are open-minded. They're wanting to see houses being built in Auckland, but they're open-minded and they are very keen that we get this process right. And the last thing that I want to see is that we buy into a process that creates so much dissatisfaction that the whole issue of amalgamation is going to come to the forefront. And so I'm interested to know whether there has been any formal dialogue or informal dialogue from yourself with senior government ministers on variations that could be sought to enable a little bit more consideration of some of the more complex matters, particularly as they impact in long established areas.
So there's not been a specific discussion as you raise it. I mean, I think we've known from the beginning that what the constraints of the process were. We knew we had a short turnaround, we knew the rules around that, and it's difficult to challenge the process when we actually don't know what the output's going to be yet. We haven't actually seen what they're going to do. So the provision to use the second 20 days if we chose to go down that path, even that we can't request until we know what the workload in front of us is and whether the first 20 days is or is not enough. So we are constrained by the way the Act has been done. We've known that for a long time, so we haven't agitated for that. I think what my team, I know what the team have brought to you today is a pragmatic view of just saying we know we've got a big task to do here. It's important we get it done in a quality way, and it's important we focus our energies in the area that matter the most and the reference point, we believe, and I'm sure you agree in principle, is the Auckland plan is the reference point for how we decide the priorities here. Until we've seen the output, any other red flags we won't know until the team have had a chance to go through it.
I guess what underpins my question is, what would the expectation of the public of Auckland be from us? Have we explored? Have we provided advocacy? We've just been through a really difficult debate, well, for some of us in any event, on the King's School one, and it's so often we don't know what we don't know, and in the case of the Hannah building, I think there was an assumption that there were heritage provisions that were on that block. And I think that there will be an assumption from the people of Auckland that we will have explored every single option that we possibly can, including advocacy to central government, to ensure that we can do this calmly and with dignity and with sufficient time to do justice to the issues. So I'm wanting to know whether you believe there would be merit in actually having some dialogue with central government on the timeline, given the complexity of the issues.
So I'm not convinced it's worth it at this point. I think what we should do is complete the task we have at hand. We should look at the output that comes to us. And we should also keep in mind, to your point about the rigour of the process, This has been a rigorous process all the way through. There's been a huge amount of opportunity for the public and ourselves to have submissions through this. The IHP have yet to declare their complete view on this. We know some things, as you know. And of course, the world doesn't stop after the 20 days. There is an adoption of the plan, and there are plan changes available to us. There's a range, there's some decisions we can make, and there are plan changes we can do after that. And I'm sure some of the decisions we make around some of those things will be tactical as well as strategic in terms of wanting to move on and what we expose ourselves to in terms of challenge as well. So I think the process has had a lot of rigour in it. I think it's had a really wide opportunity for people to participate in it. And I think we're feeling the discomfort of the pointy end of this. And I think we've just got to manage our way through it. All the team are trying to do today was to signal to you that we are going to need to prioritise. I would argue we've known that from the beginning, because we always knew there was a pretty short end of this.
It is.
Yep. Fair enough. Any other questions? Councillor Casey?
I'd like to move that we send an invitation to the local boards to be part of whatever process is decided upon today.
Councillor Casey, I'm not going to accept that. I understand the sentiment and I understand the issues as you're raising them, but following on from Mr Quinn's advice, this is the pointy end of it. This is the governing body that needs to make these strategic decisions, and we no longer will be doing place-by-place decisions that are of direct under the kind of direct decision-making ability of the board. We have front-end loaded this process with everything we can possibly throw at it, and we now need to make some of the really hard decisions. We've talked to our boards, we've shared with our boards, and those of us who are closely connected with our local areas will know the feelings. We now need to make the really tough decisions, and to be honest, I think it will confuse the situation by asking the boards to comment yet again when we need to get on and make the decisions, some of which the boards will not agree with. And I think we need to consult with our community when they can genuinely have input, and we can change our minds as a result. We need to genuinely partner with our local boards when we can absolutely utilise their expertise in decision making, but the pointy end decision making is of the governing body's responsibility, and these are regional decisions we need to make that need to be substantial and to stick legally. And I don't think we will do them in partnership with the local boards.
So what standing order were you using to not accept my amendment?
I'm just saying that this does not, you can put it up, but my advice is that this is not the process that we have indicated all the way through. And as Chair, my recommendation is that this is not the process that has been discussed.
I understand.
Either with us
I understand
or the
you
local
disagree
boards.
with it. I understand that. But to shut the local board chairs out at the last gasp is, for me, just not democratic. And they've been with us on this journey all the way through, and I'd like them to continue through to the end.
Councillor, I and Councillor Filipaina and myself have been consistent with the local boards about the fact that the last decisions will be made by the governing body. We have been absolutely unequivocal in that, and anyone who's led the local boards down a different path, I'm afraid has misled them. So if you have a recommendation you want to put up, you can do so by all means, but this is not a process that has been envisaged, nor will be useful. So you can. Well, we'll deal with the recommendations, and we can do that as a separate recommendation once you have written it. So no other questions, no other points. We're going to move to the recommendations. I'm going to put them. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against.
Against.
Casey.
Recorded.
Okay. And Watson. So it's carried.
And Fletcher.
And Stewart and Fletcher. Okay. Righty-ho. And Councillor Casey, you wish to invite the boards to be part of this process. Who will second that?
I'll second it.
Councillor Brewer.
Right.
Do you inviting the boards to be part of the process, I need to understand what that means.
Yeah,
Madam Chair, can I put a clarification here?
No committee.
Councillor
Put a clarification
Penrose.
here. So the amendment that Councillor Casey's putting up, is that as part of this committee?
I'm unsure, that's why I'm asking for, I think,
Because
some
the
clarification.
board chairs are involved in the unitary plan committee
Right.
process.
They can't be part of the
So
governing body.
I would have thought that this is the governing body's role here at the.
We're not the governing body, we're a committee of the governing.
So I need some clarification.
Recommendations unit.
No, the decision gets made here.
This committee.
The
be
decision
the
gets
governing
made at this
body.
committee. It comes here in regards to recommendation.
Yeah.
So
comes
clarification
to
there,
the-
Madam Chair.
Yeah, it
Does.
comes to the ADC in regards to a committee. That's my understanding, is that a recommendation that will go through to the governing body for then ticking off, for one.
So
That's what I'm trying to
I'll clarify that
figure
again,
out.
Madam Chair, I'll clarify that again.
Hang on, let's just
This
try and get-
committee is the governing body, so I'm talking about this committee.
Yeah. So let's just be clear. The
Yep.
recommendations that will be made, responding to the recommendations from the panel.
New Zealand after this, like a few years ago.
Sorry, Councillor Fletcher?
I'm sorry, I was just making a personal comment.
The recommendations will be dealt with by this committee.
Yes. Yeah.
So that moves from, yeah, I see you, Councillor Wood, we're just trying to get clear on the process. So it will be this committee that makes those decisions, and whether there's a final omnibus recommendation that goes through the governing body at the moment is neither here nor there, but it moves from the Unitary Plan Committee to this forum. And when we are making the decisions, they will be made by this committee. We may, find a way to inform the local board chairs and to discuss these with the local board chairs, but the decisions will not be made in partnership with the local boards. At this stage, they will be made by this committee. That's the point I'm making. So from a local board's perspective, I think we need to be a bit honest about this, and we can move a whole bunch of feel-good recommendations, but we need to be able to back it with process. And unless we can back it with process, then I think this is kind of a little bit of a meaningless gesture. Jim?
It's done with the unitary board committee, then you could invite the local board chairs to that if you wanted to, but they won't be deciding, they'll just be informed.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the only other way you could do it.
Yep. So if the recommendation is not to continue, if they're going to continue their involvement, it's that they continue to be informed. And that way, if the workshops are under the auspices of the Unitary Plan Committee, which is fine, then the local board chairs are invited, and that's fine. But they are not going to partner with the decision makers. Councillor Filipaina.
And Chair, that's what I am aware, is that when we do have the workshops, they are under the Unitary Plan
Yeah.
Committee workshops, and the local boards chairs have always been involved in the Unitary Plan Committee workshops and Unitary Plan Committee. So that will continue. But I agree with you that the decision is at your committee, and and the local boards have never been around this committee for decision-making sort of purposes. So I agree, Unitary Plan Committee workshop, Unitary Plan Committee, local boards are there with us.
And I think that's good. So I'm just going to ask Councillor Casey and Councillor Brewer, I think what we need to do is, and I was hoping we might be able to discuss it in the Unitary Plan Committee Forward Work Programme, we actually just need to work out an honest and clear set of criteria for the decision-making. Once the recommendations come out from the panel, then can we just sit down with our local boards and actually work out how we nut this through together?
Yeah.
Because, we've got 20 working days to allow our staff to do some of this critical work, and a good outcome for the unitary plan should be our paramount responsibility. And my sense is that most of our local board chairs would actually endorse that. So let's have a meaningful partnership with our local boards, and not one that isn't. So I don't know what this means. I think we can be invited to continue their involvement in the unitary plan process. I think that's fine, but let's actually work out how we Why don't we, Councillor Casey and Councillor Brewer, why don't we agree that the local board chairs be invited to continue their involvement in the unitary plan process and that this be clarified as part of the unitary plan committee. And that way we can work out when are we getting the recommendations, what is the most logical and useful role of the local boards, so our local boards don't just sort of read this and be confused. I don't think we need to say anything more about it. We'll add, can we add those
Yeah, sounds good. I'll
words?
defer to my political
Why don't
leader.
why don't we just
She's the Casey.
move that?
She's
Yeah.
whipping
Why don't
We'll
we
talk
just
about
put
that
it?
later, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that sounds
Okay.
good
I'm
outcome.
going to put that, all those in let's just deal with
Are
it.
we
We
not
can
having a
make,
division, are we?
make a meal of this, councillors. We still
Division.
have a lot of work to do
Division.
on tranche 9.
Historic one, George.
So I'm actually going
Well,
to
can I
put
speak
this.
to it then? I did have my hand up, Madam Chair.
Yes, councillor Wood, you can.
Well, I think, this quite frankly is one of interpretation. I mean, the local board chairs
To be
were here
clarified.
continually when we signed off the draft unitary plan. And I think this is a nonsense because I just don't understand what it's trying to do. And I do believe that for all intents and purposes, the local board chairs, if they're interested, and their members as well, will no doubt come in here. So this could be interpreted to mean that they're going to be sitting around the table kind of making decisions. Well, they're not going to be making decisions, that's clear.
No, it's going to be clarified.
I just want to make that point really clear as far as what involvement the local board chairs will have. I've
To
got
be
every,
clarified.
I think that it's good if they do come in here. We can have sidebars and talk about the issues with them and how they affect our particular areas and how, but to say this is I just think this is going too far if they're going to interpret it some other way, which is a possibility.
That's why I think the addition to this be clarified is a useful one. And I think
Unitary
it's
Unitary plan
reasonably
committee.
fine.